Little Fitz Pond in East Eddington, it's an outdoor special. Survival with Bud Leavitt. Now, let's join Bud and his guests.
Good evening, and what an elegant night. This is summertime in the great state of Maine. Tonight, coming to you live from Fitz Pond at Camp Roosevelt, the home of the Boy Scouts for 6 counties. Well, for 62 years, the Boy Scouts of America have been enjoying this great setting. There's nothing man-made about this tonight. This is the real thing. A background of mountains, canoes, young people, and people who enjoy the very things that make Maine so great in the eyes of the entire world. Tonight, the thrust is going to be on water safety. We're going to tell you just a little bit about the things that can make your fun in the out-of-doors enjoyable. We're going to tell you about some of the technical aspects of being safe on water. You know, this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to give you an opportunity a bit later in the show to phone in and ask you questions of these people. Now, my guest tonight in acting and working with me as co-host is Walter Abbott. If you've been a college football fan for many of these years, you know Walter Abbott was an outstanding football player at the University of Maine. Later in his career, he became the varsity football coach at the university, and still later in life, suddenly he discovered the out-of-doors. We got him out of the moleskins and the cleats, and suddenly the canoe is second nature to him. There's a great concern on this man's part with respect to safety on Maine waters, and rightly so. Each and every year we have upwards of 20 to 25 people, the result of fatalities on water. So if nothing more, in the next hour, we hope to leave you with some kind of a message that'll be indicative of safety afloat, whether it be the use of a canoe, whether it be the correct method of handling a paddle, or whether it be whether your boat is properly equipped for going afloat in Maine. Here we are in mid-July in Maine, with the elegant weather we're enjoying this day and on this evening, and of course there are thousands out there. We hope that perhaps many of you thousands are watching tonight from your cottages, from your homes, and just about anywhere where there is water, canoes, boats, and life jackets, all a part of an integral part of the state of Maine. So I'm going to join my co-host tonight, Walter Abbott, and we're going to talk about the little things that are Maine. First off, without even mentioning the word safety, have you ever seen a more elegant setup for an outdoor show?
It's beautiful, Bud. It's just, you mentioned earlier, it's like being back 40 miles on the Allagash or the St. John. It's a beautiful setting here.
What kind of a season have you had on water?
We've been in many a time. That's why we know a little about safety.
What are we going to do tonight, and what's the message that we hope to get across?
Well, I think that canoeing in the state, Bud, is going to be very popular. It has been over the years, but more and more you drive up the highways and down the highways, and you see a lot of canoes on cars. We have a national championship race coming this year in Maine, so of course a lot of interest in that part of it. But people are out there, and they need training. You have to train properly, just like playing golf or anything else. You need to get the basics down, and this is what we'd like to bring across tonight, is a basic message on safety.
Where do you start on a program like this? Do you start outfitting yourself properly? Do you start from point one on safety equipment? For example, what do you use for life-saving or life-preserving equipment? What are the correct measurements, fits? What are all the technical things that are so important?
I think it's important first off to know the law that anyone in a canoe must have a life jacket, should be in the canoe with them, and we feel strongly should be worn, because a life jacket that is not worn is of very little value. So we stress, again, putting the life jacket on prior to getting into the canoe. We have a couple of young folks here. We could demonstrate how to fit a jacket properly and some of the things to look for.
At this point in time, I should tell you that on our staff tonight and working this show, from the University of Maine are Janet Urquhart, as well as John Weed. You'll remember John, he's the handsome guard who played a lot of football at the University of Maine. They represent the University of Maine. There's a little intercollegiate rivalry here, too, because representing Harvard are Becky Weed and Steve Abbott. And then we have a group of Boy Scouts who are going to help us. There's Bobby Nichols, Wayne Lobley, Darren Mahan, of course, and then there's Paul Burchell. And out in the boat, holding a camera with Chuck Halsted at the oars, is a young man named Gary Haynes. So we've gone to great limits tonight to bring you this safety show, with cameras afloat in a boat, wires underwater, and places like that. First, tell me the difference in life jackets.
Well, there are 4 basically different styles, 4 different types. And the one that the canoeist is going to be involved with is what they call Type 3 jacket. A Type 3 jacket, people should know, will not support an unconscious person in an upright position. It takes a semi-conscious person in an upright position, so you have to be able to move in order to keep your head above the water. But the thing about a Class 3 jacket is it's comfortable, we hope, and one that is will supply full body protection for the individual wearing it.
When you speak of full body protection, you're talking about hips, you're talking about ribs, you're talking about the neck area. What part of the body?
Well, maybe we can bring our
All right.
models in. Let's start with, this is Steve, and we can see
That's quite a hunk of man. Good to have a man on this show. These little guys, you know. Come over here, honey.
That would get Janet's heading out there. The thing about Steve here on this jacket, this is an inexpensive jacket. One of the things that's important, it's inexpensive, but there are some flaws we ought to point out, and as Steve turns around, you'll see that his back is completely exposed to possibly injury through rocks or bouncing off of something in the water. Also underneath on the ribs in this area is the same thing.
While we're conducting the physical, Steve, what happened here? A little black and blue mark there.
Yeah, he was beating me at home. I was bad the other night.
You know,
This is Walter's son, in case there's any doubt.
Steve, why don't you take that one off now? And Janet. Janet has on a beautiful jacket here. You notice the high visibility, which is very important in the water. So if somebody's in, they've got a problem, the high visibility is important. So quick notification, quick recognition of where they are for the rescue. She has the strong zipper. Down here is the line. Why don't you untie that, Janet, please? And this is the most important part of the jacket, the tie line at the bottom. That must be tied and tied properly. We've lost people in the water, unfortunately, because the jacket has been put on or does not fit properly. Because when you go in, your hands go in the water, your hands go over your head, the jacket tends to flop right up over the hands. So you tie that, Janet, tie that securely, please. And you notice how that knot is a critical part. That life jacket, incidentally, Bud, will float 16 pounds. Now, that doesn't mean that Janet weighs a little more than 16, not much more, Janet. But what we're talking about, that'll float 16 pounds of the human body. A normal average person in the water might weigh 4 or 5 pounds. So it's more important to get the proper size and say, I'll wear a larger jacket to get more flotation. The difference may be a half an ounce or an ounce of flotation in an extra large from a small. So the fit is the most important thing.
All right, let's go from life jackets to equipment that you have right here. Jan,
Okay.
if you step back just one moment, we want you to properly get into a canoe, and we're going to do that for a moment. Okay, we've got paddles here in different shapes and sizes and colors. Why?
Well, this is your basic. This happens to be a Shaw and Tenney paddle right here, and this is your main guide handle, and this is a basic wood paddle. It's good, it's very efficient, expensive, but it's a very trusting paddle, great flexibility, good feel, and this is what the old Maine people love to paddle with, and it's a very good paddle.
Why the fluorescent orange? To locate it?
Well, it's for several reasons, Bud. One is for safety, so that we can give their river signals now. There are standardized river signals for canoeists. And that, if you want to show that, you can see that miles away. Or long distance over water in a fog or in the dark, you can see that very. And we also use this for instruction purposes at the university.
All right, briefly, what are the signals?
The signals, emergency would be a violent waving over the head. That means a life has been threatened. Somebody's lost underwater, and we hope we never see that signal. We never want to use it. Stop is across the chest, and then run river center. Run river left and run river right, pointing at the banks. And that's basically all the river signals are on a canoe. They don't want to get too many to confuse people.
Is this a uniform signal nationally?
Yes, a national uniform signal system.
I did not mention that you are the only accredited certified instructor by the American Canoe Association in the state. You are the one who certifies other instructors, and I think we have less than 10 in Maine. How many do we have at the university?
We have 6 at the university now, 6 students that have completed the course down at Community College in Massachusetts, in the New England Outdoor Center.
Now that I've told you how good you are, tell me, I want you to explain something about the safety kit. You make great emphasis on the safety box and the need for, we didn't go into the other paddles, but we will in a moment. Okay, what do you carry here?
Well, there's certain safety equipment, certain safety items that should be with you. One is a first aid kit. And in the first aid kit, the only thing you need is what you're capable of working with. Some people put a fancy kit in, they don't know how to use it. Take what you know, what you can handle, and put it in your first aid kit. And this old ammunition box makes excellent. It's float, it's waterproof, and you notice that we use a carabiner to hook it into the canoe with, so if we tip over, we'll have it still with us. And you can put a lot in it.
What do you, as Walter Abbott, what do you include in here?
Well, Number one, we'd want to know the people in the party, who's going to be involved, do they have any special medication that needs to be taken. Anyone with allergic to bee stings, we have a bee sting kit in here, for example. And then the basics, Band-Aids. All we've ever used in 5 years is Band-Aids and blister ointment, and that's basically it. We
No compass?
No compass.
What about a jackknife?
Jackknife, yes. You notice I have one on my hip. We think this is very important.
I thought I was going to fool you, but you haven't. Why do you keep a jackknife handy?
Well, there's several reasons. Number one could be an entanglement with a rope in a canoe. And it could be a life or death situation. You have to cut the rope to get away from an entrapment. And the other thing can be, of course, safety and first aid. You can use it on shore. So these are dual purpose in carrying a knife.
All right. Tell me about the... Oh, you got a bailing can here, obviously, right? That's a damn poor looking baler. How do you hide it?
That's kind of hard. If you take that small end and bail, it's kind of tough, bud. But
here comes the jackknife.
The jackknife comes into play, another role.
Good old Swiss Army knife, and you can't open it, friends. Everybody in the University of Maine is going to remind you of this for the next 10 years.
But we thought we could show people how to cut this. A lot of people don't realize that we want to cut it at an angle down. Probably cut your shirt, bud. Is that an important shirt for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
All right. So by bringing an empty container, using it for other reasons, water or what have you,
there's a bailing
bucket. You also
bucket.
have the bailing bucket.
And I think it's important to mention here, don't tie this in with a heavy rope, because that's another piece of rope that can entangle around your feet. Put it in with a carabiner or Velcro it in so you can have it readily available, get out of the way.
Good. All right, you make great emphasis in your safety programs at the university on throwing a line, right?
Correct.
Correct. All right. And you also told me in past conversations that you believe that every state police officer, every officer of any community, game wardens, any people concerned with life should be able to have a throw line, right?
I feel very strongly that way, bud. And this is what we're talking about here, this type of a throw line.
It's a throw bag, actually, right?
There are two types. This is called a throw line, and this is a throw bag. And the accessibility of this is not good. You have to stop, untie it, untangle it. We've all been through that hassle. And that is one way to do it. But it's much quicker to carry a throw bag. We got this from Bill Stearns in Stillwater.
Did Bill invent this?
No, Bill isn't smart enough for that, but Fern might have. And
you just lost a vote in the November election, but go ahead.
Fern incidentally made these for us, and it's a very simple gadget. We have about 85 feet of rope in there, and it's coiled in, hooked, and this is it. And we're ready.
Suppose you got a bad arm. How far can you throw that? Seriously?
Average people should be able to throw this but anywhere between 40 and 80 feet, depending upon ability.
Really?
Anyone that's ever bowled or ever been exposed to it can throw it 50, 60, 70 feet easily.
Or is this an underhand toss?
Yes, you throw it exactly like in bowling. You plant your feet exactly as you're going to bowl. One thing, they all come with a loop in the end. Don't ever put that on your hand, because if you do, you can get pulled into the water. Tremendous pull on people sometimes in the water, especially in moving water. So you want to coil about 6 feet of the rope. We'll demonstrate this later on. Step on it so that you won't lose it, because that's very often the case. Hold it, as in bowling. I'm bowling in a left-handed situation, and you come through and you release at about 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10 o'clock. And you call rope as you throw it to alert the people into the water that help is coming.
Boy, that's interesting, really.
Well, I just think it's very quick, it's very safe, and we've had some unfortunate situations.
Has it been put to use? Has there been an actual case where this came into play and saved a life? Without naming places or individuals?
We use it all the time, and we've had some people that maybe didn't save lives, but it saved them some hard trips through rough rapids or over some all the time. Sure, we use this. We carry about 6 with us on every trip we go.
Do you?
Yeah, from the university, we carry them.
All right, let's get into the actual demonstrations. Number one, we're going to put the kids in how to mount that canoe correctly, right?
Well, hopefully they can do it without falling in.
All right, I'm sure they will. And with his muscles, he could save the mountain here tonight.
This is one of the hardest. We have more people fall in, but incidentally, falling in, getting in and out of the canoe than we do in the water many times.
I can't understand that, because I fell off a rock in the Penobscot River and went in this year. It was a famous splash, but I've never done it in a canoe, and you're not getting me out there to run that risk either.
We may have to. If these young fellas can't do it, we may have to.
All right.
You notice first, Bud, that Stephen is being a stern paddler. If it was on a river, the upstream end of the canoe is held and a downstream person gets in first. In this situation, Janet is a bow paddler, meaning the front of the canoe. Steve will hold the canoe, next to the dock while Janet gets in. Notice how carefully she puts her foot into the middle. Hands go on both gunnels of the rails of the canoe. She positions herself in a kneeling position, and she's bringing out her paddle. She'll go in what we call a running position or in a high brace to help stabilize the canoe. And then Stephen will do the same, placing his foot in the middle of the canoe, both hands on the gunnel, down, spread the knees, get comfortable, and then off they go. They're ready for a safe journey.
Good. All right, let's get in position and put the rest of the cast into play here. Tell me, what do you want to do first?
I think probably there's basically three types of rescue. One
Right.
is self-rescue. And if we start with that, that should be initiated the minute you have an unpremeditated tip in the water, and that's just tipping over in a canoe. And when you have a tip over, then the first thing you've got to do is take care of yourself, self-rescue. And John Weed and his sister Becky will demonstrate that. And what they're going to do, they're out there in the canoe. And notice we might point out at this time, Bud, if they could focus in on the flotation. See the flotation? You can use old inner tubes, you can use airbags or foam. And this boat is using foam, and that floats it much higher. It's a great life-saving device, and anyone in recreational whitewater canoeing is going to be involved with using extra flotation. Now, as they go over, you'll hear a cry of canoe.
You okay?
And then you notice John immediately checked to his sister Becky to see if she's all right. They still have both have the paddles. They swim to the upstream end of the canoe. They grab the painter line. Don't put the hands on the gunnels because they're going to hurt. Because if they've got the hands on the gunnels and they go over a rock, then they can hurt the hands greatly by the suction and pressure down on the canoe. And then they swim towards shore in a ferrying position, moving in towards shore. Again, self-rescue.
Self-rescue.
And notice, Bud, how high that canoe is floating in the water.
It sure
the gunnels
is.
are
It sure
actually
is.
out of water.
That's right.
And if that canoe didn't have the foam in it, it's a much tougher thing to do.
Okay. Number two.
Okay, we've got a couple of young men going over. Bobby Nichols. Bobby is waterfront director here. Okay, Bobby. He comes out. They have an unpremeditated tip. His partner, Wayne, they'll tip in this direction. They don't want to get in the water, do they?
No, I don't.
There they go. That's about like you to react out there. I'd have trouble
I'm
shaking
a
you
little
out of
quicker
there.
than that. I've been in a couple of those who are quicker than that without that little help on the bottom.
Now, they're going to bring the canoe back up, and this is called self-rescue by getting into the canoe, and this is possible. It's a little tricky. They're going to get in. The canoe is in the same upright position that they were paddling before, and notice that they're going to notice one man has lost his paddle.
Lost his paddle.
And hopefully Bobby still has his. Now they can lay down, lay right down, men, in the canoe. And notice as they lay down and get those life jackets, pull those life jackets under, the canoe will come up. And Wayne is using his hands, Bobby the paddle, and they can get to shore quickly that way. I think it'd be interesting and maybe important to point out here, but that these people are close to shore, and people may say, well, you're demonstrating close to shore. Well, that's where you should paddle on a lake. Because you get out in the middle, you got problems. It's a long way, especially in a cold water situation. You're not going to make it ashore if you're alone.
I want to talk about hypothermia in just a moment. All right. The third demonstration.
Okay, the next demonstration will be Steve. Are you ready? John? Okay. Why don't you men come over? Why don't you, Bobby, go out and go airplane rescue right now? The next type of rescue we have is basically involving another craft, and that's why whenever you paddle, whether it be on lakes or in river, you should have, we say, a minimum of 3 crafts for safety purposes. And in this situation, Bobby's craft has gone over. They'll just paddle it back out, Bobby, take it right back. 2 rescue people will come in to help them out. And these people are going to do what they call canoe rescue. Some call it the airplane rescue. And Bobby and Wayne will get out there. Come on over, men, pick them right up. They will try to come in and keep it at a perpendicular angle to the craft. They'll be paddling. Notice too, Bud, the visibility of the different canoes. We like high visibility canoes on a lake because of the motorboats, the high-speed boats. You notice that beautiful white canoe from Old Town. The green color, sometimes a motorboat won't see that. But the high visibility yellow shows up greatly, and it helps in safety.
You've just set back the guide industry 100 years.
That's, well, that's...
You know, those old guides weren't that green.
Oh, talking about river and hunting and things like this, that's where you go, sure.
I know.
My dad would never be in anything but a green canoe. Okay, men?
All right.
You notice now that the 2 men in the water will jump right out, help them align that craft. They come at a right angle. Wayne is going to the opposite side to stabilize the rescue canoe. Bobby is on the back end, of the capsized canoe. They're going to break the suction now. The two men in the canoe are working together. Darren and Paul are pulling it up. They've broken the suction. Incidentally, I saw one of these on the Dead River last weekend by Frank Knight and Bob Foster, a couple of ACA instructors. It was unbelievable. It was in the heavy rapids. They did the same thing in rapids.
In rapids.
And saved the canoe and brought it through in the airplane fashion right over it the way it is right now. It was an amazing sight on the Dead River. Now they put the canoe back in. Then they come up alongside. Notice that Wayne is coming around now. Darren and Paul are holding and locking the canoes. Notice their hands, but it's important not to get the thumb jammed between the gunnels. We had a girl break a finger this spring on that. And Bobby's, that's it, Bobby, get your hands out. Bobby's in. Paul was holding it heavy. Okay, now Wayne will come in. Bobby will add his strength to build a raft effect by the hands.
Beautiful.
And
well done. And you'll notice one thing, the Boy Scout counselor caps, not a one came off all four heads. Beautiful job. Came up without losing a cap, too. All right, seated out and ready to go outside. Moving right out, men. We'll move right along here. I told you this time would go. Here we are, moving right along in a hurry.
Okay, John is coming in now, and he's...
Yep.
John is coming in, and he's going to have an unpremeditated tip. And Becky, they have their help canoe along. Again, they're traveling in a party, so they've got rescue people with them. Unpremeditated tip. Over they go again. Canoe will be the call. Immediately, John checks with Becky. Becky checks with John to see if there's any foot entrapment or anything that's possible along that line. Hit a head on a gunnel or something. They move towards the end of the canoe. Steve and Janet come in. Again, a verbalization. Steve is asking, are they okay? Now, this is critical. Steve throws the painter line, his painter line, or the rope tied to the deck of the canoe to John and Becky. And then they will canoe rescue to shore. John and Becky swam it in before. Now they're going to have the help, the aid of the other canoe with the two strong paddlers bringing them in. And there you have canoe assistance rescue.
Beautiful.
And continually check. The verbalization is important, bud, especially in the water. Keep checking. Are you okay? Because you want people first, equipment second.
People first and equipment second.
A lot of people get excited. They've got a $1,000 canoe or a $500 canoe, and it tips over and they start worrying. They're making canoes every day. Old Town and White and those people, they want to sell canoes. So don't worry about the canoes. Get the people out.
All right, before we go to the telephone to answer any questions that we may have from our viewers, hypothermia is a thing that interests me. I don't know your feelings about it, but we're coming to the fall season soon. I regret to say there'll be a change in the temperature in the water. It'll get cooler. We have late fall fishing. We have late canoe trips. We have people who go duck hunting. We have people who go deer hunting. And the canoe and the boat comes into play. Hypothermia comes into play. What are your feelings on this?
Well, hypothermia, which is basically the lowering of the core temperature, that is the vital organs of the body, which include the head, heart, and that area down through here. The lowering, the hands can lower greatly, or the legs, and that's no problem. The problem is the lowering of the core temperature of the body, and that's your 98.6. And if you start to drop, you go up a few degrees, you get a temperature. And you know how that makes us feel. And the same thing, if you start to drop that temperature a few degrees, and it throws the chemicals in the body out of balance, and you've got a problem. And we have a problem in Maine because we have cold water late into the spring, and as you mentioned, early into the fall. And any time, a good rule of thumb is any time the combined temperature of air and water is less than 100, we've got a problem. And you need extra protection. Again, if the water temperature and the air temperature combine, say the water temperature is 50 and it's 50 degrees and you've got 100, and that's marginal right there. That's when you need extra protection. Heavy wool is a great protector because it holds heat into the body, even when wet, as does some of the new synthetic fabrics, such as Thin Solite and Polar Guard, etc., hollow fill. But we also have wetsuits, and more people, I'm very happy to report that I've seen many people in Maine going to the wetsuit, because that's when a wetsuit should go on, and it's definitely part of canoeing. It used to be if you wore a wetsuit in a canoe, you're a sissy. And now it's very important, people understanding the protection they get from a wetsuit. So hypothermia is a very realistic problem, and one that the public needs to be educated on.
Until the last 8 to 10 years, the canoe was something very sacred, used by Indians, old Maine guides, people who were expertly proficient in handling a paddle in a canoe. Few people used them. Now you see thousands, actually, of canoes atop automobiles, weekend people, families, and so forth who have taken this sport up. What fascinates you about the canoe?
I would say number one, it's a clean feeling. To go out there, and I know a lot of people put the motors on, they like to hear that motor run. I like the cleanness. I like the physical part of it. and kind of getting back with nature. You get a better respect for nature, I feel, from the feel of a canoe, and it's a very quiet mode of transportation, and a safe one, if you know the basic skills. So I think the feeling of getting back to nature is what I love about a canoe.
The fisherman who sits on his life jacket, what do you say to him?
I don't ask me that. I'll embarrass these people.
No, you won't. No,
I just don't, you know.
You can't understand that?
I can't understand it. And my dad's an example, you know, he'll go fishing, he'll put a life jacket, he gets down on his, he puts it under the seat, tucks it away. And it's no good. You've got to have the jacket on. And I think that that's something. Let me point out a couple of things about life jackets. They're a wind protector.
Right.
They protect the body physically. And on a hot day like today, it acts just like insulation in a house. If a house is well insulated, then it's going to be cool. And these life jackets are cool when they're worn properly. It reflects the heat off, and it keeps the body cool. So you can't hurt yourself by wearing them.
One other question, a following question. You said that once upon a time when one put on a wetsuit, more or less was considered a sissy. You know, that's a difficult barrier to break down with a fisherman, putting on that life jacket to be seen out in the water, whether it be the Penobscot River, St. Croix, St. John, Allagash, or wherever. How do you break this down to him?
I think what you do is, it's just like in hockey, for example, a face mask came in, and the pros, they didn't even want to wear a helmet.
Right.
And now that the pros are starting to wear helmets because they wore it in college. The people in college are wearing it because the people in the little leagues. And the same thing in canoeing or mouthpieces in football. When it's safety involved, you have to start with educating the young people, like they're doing here at Camp Roosevelt with the Boy Scouts. They're educating them the proper way to do it, and then they'll carry on later on in life. But I think it's an educational process.
We'll ask our viewers now. You may call in if you'd like, and we'd be glad to field your questions. In the meantime, Walter and I will keep talking. Now, we mentioned paddles a moment ago, and we're going to have the throwback demonstration. But you have other shaped paddles other than the typical one. Why? Why this offset one, so to speak, and why this one that's marked fluorescent red and black?
Well, what we have here is what they call a bent shaft paddle. And you can notice that the angle comes down is somewhere between 15 and 18 degrees. And this is for efficiency in paddling stroke, so that when you reach into the water, as you reach out forward, you're getting a maximum pressure on the blade, and when you come back, you stop right here, and you're getting a maximum force forward. Whereas if you continued on by, like in the conventional paddle, the last 18 inches, you pull the canoe down into the water. And this is a much more efficient paddle as far as stroke is concerned. It's an odd-looking thing, but it gets very comfortable after you've used it. Notice this. Isn't this a fancy one?
Sure is. Quite a piece of maple, isn't it?
Bird's eye maple.
Bird's eye all the way, right down through it.
Sure. Take an old Maine guy to recognize that, wouldn't it?
All right. Let's take a caller. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hello, Bud.
How are you?
Why, first rate. I'm calling from Northport.
From Northport, yes, sir.
Now, I cannot resist asking this one simple question. You have seen the demonstrations. Won't you try and show us one yourself?
I knew the first guy called in would want me to hit the pool. I've already been in once on the Penobscot this year, and I'm not going in a Fitz Pond. How you doing down there tonight?
It's a fine show, and I think it's a great service to the people, all the people that would take time to watch it and pay attention.
I thank you very much.
All right, Bud.
You bet. Good night. All right, where are you calling from?
Portland.
From Portland?
Yes, I'd like to know how you would handle a victim that was stuck unconscious and in the water.
A victim who was in the water?
How you'd rescue them.
How you would rescue them.
That's a complicated rescue, but there's no question about it. And what you try to do, you treat them, first off, if they're unconscious, you've got blockage of airway or a heart attack or whatever, and you've got to treat them in the water the same way you would on land. Immobilize, bring ashore. It's a complicated thing. You get a board out there some way, and you've got to, if you have to swim them in, you have to hold them in a rigid position, again, supporting the neck. If you need CPR, CPR should be conducted all the way in.
Does that answer you, ma'am?
Just one thing, the main thing I was wondering is if you were in the water and it was like in the rapids, what would be the best way to get him out of the water?
In the rapids.
On this situation, I don't think it's realistic. Let me just point out why. If somebody was unconscious in there in the rapids, then you're going to have to wait to a pool, because you cannot rescue anybody in rapids that's unconscious other than just bring them ashore because of the force and the pressure of the water. The water pressure just from the waist down in 10-mile-an-hour water is 300 pounds, so you can't stand up to help. The only thing you can do is float through until you come to a pool, and then you would use the same rescue techniques that you'd use on a lake.
All right?
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
All right, good evening, and where are you calling from?
Brewer.
Brewer.
Okay, two quick questions.
All right.
And first, let me thank both you and Mr. Abbott for this great public service.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, number one, do you think the so-called SIMPSON devices contribute to the safety of a canoe? I guess they're the things that, I mean, it's a sort of a flotation device attached to the inside or the outside of the rim. Do you think they make them safer?
There's no question about that. It's a great advantage.
You bet it is.
I'd recommend to anybody that's going to have a canoe, the more flotation you can fit in, the better chance of rescue you have, as we showed with the big white foam tonight. And all that does allows you to trip and bring your equipment in the middle. And I think the more flotation you can attach, the better.
And let me say this and add to that, Professor Claude Westfall, who fishes the Penobscot River, has a canoe outfitted in that very same manner. Second question.
Okay, once in a while I see people with small sails on canoes. Do you think that that's an unnecessarily dangerous way to learn sailing or fool around?
I think that a canoe can be used for sailing. I haven't done it myself, but I know a lot of people that have. They've enjoyed it. Again, you need to be skilled in water rescue, water safety, and water sports. And if you have that background and that ability, then I think that's a wonderful way to go. And it's a great thing for young kids to get out and get involved, if, again, they've had proper training.
Good. Thanks very much.
You bet. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from VZ, and I'm Fred Newman, and I'd like to compliment both you and Walter Abbott on the program that you're putting on.
Well, thank you, Fred.
I get disappointed with TV from time to time, but then we get a nice program like this, which restores my faith in the idea of. I don't have any questions to ask, but I've been in canoes all my life. But tonight I've learned a lot from you and Walt. Thank you very much.
Fred, the next time I get you on a golf course, I won't ask any strokes from you after that. Thank you very much. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Holton, Maine.
Holton, Maine. Yes, sir.
I was wondering what you're doing.
What's what? I think we lost Holton. Good evening, and where are you calling from? All right. We lost that call. Let's have a demonstration on the throw bag right now.
First off, just setting it up, but I think it's important to understand, normally you set up 3 bags on shore. This is called shoreline rescue. We went with self-rescue, then canoe rescue, and now shoreline. This is where you think there's going to be a problem running a river, then you put people on shore for safety purposes. They'd be outfitted with bags, and normally you work a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary bag along the riverbank, preferably in some calm water, right? Not where the accident you think will happen, the unpremeditated tip will happen, but give them time to recover and get down below a little bit. And then you set it up on shore, and you never tie the end off. It's important to remember the law of physics here that the pressure on the ends are the same. It's just like fishing. If you've got a big fish on the end and you pull it hard, you're going to lose them. The same with this. If it takes 3 people to hold this end on shore, then it's going to take 3 people to help that person hold out there, which isn't realistic. So you feed them just like in fishing, and you try to bring them in and move down and play them like a fish and bring them into shore, which is important. And we can show here, Janet and Steve will be going over. They've come through just like they're coming down a river, and they have an unpremeditated tip.
All right, let's see this. Step right up there close so we can watch how you're going to do this.
Notice I step on the line. As we mentioned earlier, I'm standing like I'm going to bowl. And this is, again, I feel every safety officer in the state should have this, and it's a very, you watch this action right here. They have an unpremeditated tip. And as they go over, I'm going to throw the line between them, these 2 of them. So I'll try to throw the line between, and they'll both work back on the line, and you'll see the rescue performed. Okay, unpremeditated tip. Canoe! Rope! You notice the call of rope? They've seen the rope. The rope alerts them mentally to look for it. They've been trained to look for it. Hear their verbalization. They're back. And now I can bring them in very easily, hand over hand, into shore. This is the quickest, safest way for any kind of a self-rescue, a shoreline rescue, bud.
Mm-hmm. Walter, what about fast water?
Fast water, it's the same exact principle.
Right.
Just like shooting a duck, lead them a little bit.
You have to lead it a little.
And go beyond them. Never throw it behind them. Some of the books used to say throw it behind them, let the rope float down. It won't. The heaviest object in water will move the fastest. So if you've got a body in the water, it's going to move faster than the rope on top. And notice how that float bag, the throw bag, is floating. The weak point of this is your second throw is going to be a very short one. It does fill up with water somewhat, and you could go back with a second toss. But on a lot of your rivers, you only have to throw 10 or 15 feet.
Mm-hmm. Good evening, and where are you calling from? Hello? Good evening. We're having telephone problems. Let's try another. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Yes, this is Mrs. White calling from Ashland, Maine.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to have your opinion on people who have canoes and take, say, 3 or 4 people in them and a big dog. What would you...
I think you've opened a can of worms. 3 or 4 people in a canoe and a big dog.
Well, if the 3 or 4 people are Bud size, we're in trouble.
We're in deep trouble. And his size.
Why I'm asking is, to me, a dog sometimes will mind and sometimes doesn't. What if the dog gets moving around in a canoe? He weighs, say, 100 pounds. Seems to me he's going to cause some problems.
I think, Bud, the first thing here we ought to address is, first off, the weight in the canoe. The weight and the stability. The length of a canoe is important. Of course, the longer the canoe, basically, the more stable it's going to be. And when you put 3 or 4 people in a canoe, it's not a stable craft anymore. And I don't think they should do it. If you're fooling around and close to shore on a warm day, it's beautiful. But any kind of hard paddling or in rough water, absolutely not. Now, some people can bring a dog through. If they're very skilled at paddling and technically very sound, they can do it. But for the average person, no, I would stay away from them. I just wouldn't be in the other canoe.
Does that answer you, ma'am?
I've been watching people at St. Croix Lake, Powell Brook, and out in the water quite a long ways, and I've been told that water can get rough real fast. So
you better can at Howell Brook, I can tell you that.
We have a camp up there, and we watch the people. We don't go out ourselves, but we watch the people. It kind of scares us to see what they do sometimes.
Thank you very much for calling.
Oh, okay, dear.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Bangor?
Bangor, yes, sir.
Yeah. I'd like to know if there's any organizations or clubs for learning more about canoeing in Maine, particularly the Bangor area.
I think you're being led right into that one, and Walter's prepared to take that one.
We have the Paddle and Chowder Society, which is located in the Bangor area, and it's a great organization. They have clinics. Phil Hunter has been their instructor, and he's an ACA instructor, a very fine person as far as canoeing, and he and his wife, Mary, have done a lot to help that program along. And you can join up with them in the area. They have trips every weekend. They advertise the classification of water, meaning how tough it's going to be, the degree of difficulty. That's a great group to get tied in with. In the University of Maine, we have a program that we start with the very basics and build to the advanced. In the spring, we'll be running a clinic on weekends for people that do not have an opportunity to go away to advanced schools. We will have one at the university in the spring.
Does that answer you?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Oh, I'd like to know when you're going down a river and you fall out of a boat in the white water.
What you do when you fall in whitewater, son. All right, this young man wants to know when you get down a river and you fall into whitewater.
First, let me compliment him on the question, but I think that's great. What happens when you have an unpremeditated tip or tip over in white water? The first thing you do, son, is to get away from the bow of the canoe and work your way to the stern, meaning the upriver end. If you get downstream, you get a chance to get trapped between the canoe and a rock, which is a tremendous pressure, more than a ton of pressure coming against you. So you work your way to the upstream end of the canoe. You hang on to the canoe if it's all possible. If you get separated from the canoe, or even if you are still holding on to the canoe, it is important to go down feet first. The toes should be showing up through the water and back, laying flat back. Flex the knees a little bit, so if you're bouncing the rocks, there's some give in the legs, and you can push yourself off or wide yourself in that direction.
How old are you, son?
9.
You're 9 years old.
Good question.
Do you wear a life jacket, we hope?
Yeah.
You do? Well, it's good. We appreciate your call very much. Good night. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Old Town.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to congratulate Walt on showing the throwing line and the importance of having a throwing line in the canoe. I just wanted to mention that having a floating line would be very important when you're using a throwing line.
A floating line?
Yeah, what he's talking about here, Bud, is you should notice this line here is white.
Right.
And when it went out, it did go under. Now, the reason we do not
They're
use
looking, aren't they?
And what we're saying, the problem comes that if you have a rope that's dark and goes into the water quickly, you get a possibility of losing the line. That's why we have the high-colored flotation bag on the other end so they can see that. Flotation rope is hard to come by. A lot of it is that poly-type rope that is very crinkly and it's hard to throw. But there is some good on the market, some real good throw line that's high visibility and color and will float.
Why not fluorescent orange in a rope?
I don't know where they make it, but there is a high visibility yellow that they are selling now.
Yellow, right.
It's
Okay.
about 40 cents a foot, but it's good rope.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Jim Porter, and I'm from Unity.
From Unity, yes, sir.
Yeah, and the guy demonstrating there, I don't want to knock what he's doing, but when he's
Let me tell you, he's able to defend himself. Go ahead again.
When he's hauling in somebody with the rope, he should have a low center of gravity and his weight back. In case they tug on it, he'll get pulled in. So, you know.
What he's saying is a belay over the hip, and, you know, it's a technical part, but you can belay over the hip, not tying off.
Yeah. Anyway, tell Paul Burchell I'll be up Friday night.
Okay, Paul Burchell, this guy will be up Friday night. We're not supposed to use the airways to take care of your dates, but this guy's coming up Friday night. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Calling from Eastport, Maine.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask, you know, suppose you was in the rapids and, you know, you threw it out and, you know, suppose it wasn't long enough, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, son.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
You make an attempt to throw the throw bag out. It's not quite long enough.
Then what we have the backup throw lines, and hopefully the river currents will normally dictate where you're going to put the throw line. And you would have the bag that would cover the current. If you didn't, then you'd be in a very unsafe situation. In that situation, we would portage a boat or carry a boat below the rapids so that we'd have a self-rescue boat or a boat to help self-rescue from shore.
Does that answer you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Bud. Jim Chandler calling from Brewer.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Just want to add the congratulations to Penobscot Bay Power Squadron to you for a great show. You and Walter doing that's a tremendous job. And if I might just say so, we do have a boating course, free public boating course, starting on September 16th.
When? October 16th?
September 16th.
September 16th.
September 16th. Up at EMBTI.
Fine. Thank you very much,
we
Jim.
can follow through with any of that.
Good.
Great. Super
Good
show.
chance to announce it.
Thank you.
Good evening. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Camden, Bud.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth on the setting on the life preserver trick. If it doesn't work, you can't grab it when the canoe goes up. I learned that the hard way.
He learned it the hard way.
A lot of people have.
Yeah, well, I think you.
Okay. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Bud. This is Mike Hodson up in Orono.
Hello, Michael. How are
you
you?
doing? I thought it'd be interesting if Coach Abbott could explain. A lot of problems that I see are somebody who's paddling on a lake, and they'll be by themselves in the canoe, and it'll be kind of a windy day, and they'll go for a nice ride down the lake with the wind. But then when they go to turn around, they stay in the back of the canoe, and they have a problem going up into the wind. And I thought Coach Abbott could maybe explain that and help some people out that way.
He's a football technician with that question, isn't he, huh?
Sure, we can. Do we have a demonstrator out here?
Sure.
Steve, would you just, Janet, would you hop out just a minute, please? We'll have Steve demonstrate because of the...
We got a float and cast out here. We just command them around, and Steve will give us a demonstration.
Steve is in what they call a stern, or the rear end of the canoe, and as he's paddling, back paddle, Steve, give way backwards. Notice a bow of canoe that's out of the water, and what Mike is saying, that if you're on a lake, there's no way you're going to be able to paddle that canoe in this situation. So what Steve would do would move forward, Steve. Move forward, please. And now you notice that the bow has gone in more. If the wind continues to blow and you can't go, Steve, move over the thwart, which is a wooden part connecting the sides of the canoe together. And Steve can come way up into the middle of the canoe. Continue up, Steve. Continue moving up. In case you get 240 pounds in the canoe, but it's going to go down a little bit.
I love to see these big men out here.
And now the canoe is down in the water in the front, and you could paddle into the wind very easily. Does that take care of you, Mike?
Hey, that sounds great, Coach.
That's a good question, too, Mike.
Yeah, and say hello to John Weed for me, too, will you?
All right. Say hello to John Weed.
All right. Bye-bye.
Mike Hodgson, the old football coach. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Calling from Holton, Maine.
From Holton, all right.
I was wondering if... I forgot the guy's name beside you. I was wondering if he's ever gone fishing the Allegash.
Who, Mr. Abbott?
Yeah.
Mr. Abbott has fished the Allegash, I can assure you. He's been there. He's fished the Allegash, the St. John, and many of the rivers around Holton. Okay?
Yeah.
Good evening. Where are you calling from?
Brewer.
Brewer.
Okay. Assuming you're
careful and observe the rules of safety, would you say that kayaks are inherently more dangerous or difficult to use than canoes?
You had the question that I was going to ask him as we went off the show. But let's have it right now. Kayaks versus canoes.
Well, a kayak can do a lot of things in the water. They're closed, and you can go into great volumes of water. The only thing is there, I think you have to, again, need the basic fundamentals. If you're a good canoeist, then you're safe in the water if you know the limitations of the craft. And the limitations of a kayak go much higher. You can do much more in a kayak. So, again, I think a kayak is a very safe vehicle to use in the water if you know the basics. You know how to do the roll. If you're upside down, bound into the rocks, that's tough on the head. So I would say either one if you've got the skills.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Bud. This is Bob McDonald calling from Bangor.
Hi, Bobby. How are you?
Good. I've got a question for you. There are a couple different theories about when you go overboard, whether you should leave your clothes on for to retain heat or to take them off for weight. What do you feel about that?
Good question.
Yeah, good question, but these you definitely keep your clothes on. Number one, if you have any kind of wool or anything like that on, the thing I think if you go over, you mentioned hypothermia earlier, the thing you don't want to do is to put get as much of the body out of the water as possible and don't move around. The more you move around, the heat loss can go up to 240 times greater than in still air. So it's important not to move around, but keep your clothing on because it will help protect.
All right, Bob?
Good enough. Thanks an awful lot.
You bet. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Bangor.
Yes, sir.
The throwback intrigues me. I've been canoeing for a long time, and I've never seen anything like it. Where can I get one?
The throwback, he's been canoeing a long time, but he's never seen one. And where can he get one?
Well, I gave Fern Stearns her plug earlier, but you can buy that from about any of your boating stores. We'll have them now. And the thing that I would look for is a high-visibility bag and one that's got enough weight so you can throw it. And any of your sporting dealers in the area should have them.
Did this interest you? Did this interest you?
Yes, it does. What about the floating line?
The floating line, some people have it, other people don't. I just don't know on a floating line. We don't use floating line. We use line that floats fair, but not great. The other is so expensive.
I'm interested in how long you've been canoeing and your interest particularly in the throw bag. Did this impress you that much?
Oh, quite a bit. I've been canoeing for maybe 12 years now and do a lot of whitewater.
Good. So show us a success if we get just one out there.
It's a great rescue item, Bud. There's no question.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Lubeck.
Lubeck, yes, sir.
Would there be any advantage if you were alone in a canoe using a double-bladed paddle as they use on kayaks?
Double-bladed paddle in a canoe alone as they use in kayaks.
Some people use double-bladed, very few, because again, if normally they're not skilled at both, the single-bladed and a double-bladed paddle. And your canoeists that are skilled at single-bladed would not have it. It's an expensive item and probably wouldn't have it. I wouldn't be carrying it with them. But there's no problem with using it. A lot of people do.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You bet. Good evening, and where are you calling from? Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Caribou.
Caribou. Did you get any rain up there today?
No.
I was in the county yesterday, and you desperately need it. What's your question?
If you're in white waters, what do you do when you flip over and if you glance and see a rock right in front of you when you turn over in a kayak?
In a kayak? You have a rock and you turn over. Do you grab the rock?
You would try to come in if you'd come in behind the rock. It's what are called an eddy. It's a safe rescue spot in behind with a current. It would break the current and you try to rescue in behind the rock until another craft or shoreline rescue could get to you.
Does that answer you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
East Eddington.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know about Camp Roosevelt's canoeing program.
You'd like to know about Camp Roosevelt's canoeing program. Well,
right.
Just in about 5 minutes, we'll be talking to Mr. Leslie, and we'll talk about that. Get you that in a moment, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Gardner, Maine.
Yes, sir.
It's a question about the throw bag.
Yes,
the
sir.
throw bag seems to be an item that you would use from shore to a canoe in the water. How would the throw bag, when carried in the canoe, be used from canoe to canoe?
It would not be. It's something that should not be used from canoe to canoe, because at that situation, you're putting both crafts in danger. One's already over. You've had an unpremeditated tip. And when you start standing up to throw a throw bag, then you're putting yourself in a situation that's not safe. So a throw bag is only to be used from shoreline rescue.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from St. Francis, Maine.
From St. Francis?
Yep.
Boy, you got canoes up there.
Yeah.
How's your weather in St. Francis tonight?
Very hot.
Very hot, okay. The sun is going down here, and it's very cool and very comfortable. Your question?
Yeah, I'd like to know what's the difference between getting into a canoe off a wharf and getting in off a lane right on shore.
I didn't get that question.
Yeah, I've got it, Bud. What the young man wants to know, the difference between getting into a canoe off from the wharf as compared to on shore. There's absolutely no difference, except you would do it if on a lake. You would do the same from the dock as from the shore. But on a river, you always get into the upstream end last.
Does that answer you?
Yeah, thank you.
Say hello to everyone in St. Francis tonight.
Yeah.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Dover.
Dover, Foxcroft. Yes, sir. Your question.
When you're canoeing and you tip over and you try to do a roll like you do in a kayak.
Right.
What is it? Do you do the same maneuvers as you would in the kayak?
This young man's ahead of his time.
He sure is. Talking about the Eskimo. How old are you, son?
14.
14, all right.
Those Dover boys I had to get ahead of. But what he's talking about is the Eskimo roll in canoeing, which most people, 99% of the people say you cannot do, because as you go over, the boat fills up and you can't self-right yourself. But there are people now that are using what they're calling a saddle, and they're strapping and tying themselves in, and they are being able to come back up in a similar stroke to what a kayaker would use. So it is possible.
Okay.
Can you do it?
Yeah, thank you.
I like that.
Huh? That's a great question. Boy, we got some young people watching the show tonight. Great. Good evening, and where are you calling from?
West Enfield.
West Enfield, yes, sir. On the shores of Coldstream Pond.
Yes. I'd like to know if, like, that guy moved up in the canoe to switch his weight.
Right.
Well, I've noticed people put, like, rocks and stuff, or just weights in the front of the canoe to, like, if they're all alone and they want to fish too or something like that, they put weight in the front. Would that be all right, or?
To keep the bow down, he's talking. Go ahead.
Be excellent. It's the same situation. It's many ways to do things, and what Steve did, he moved up in the boat because he was paddling on a lake by himself. He could have gone to shore. If the shore was close enough, he could have gotten ashore, put rocks in the front, weighted down, same results.
Good question. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Good evening, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Bob White from Old Town.
Yes, Bob.
You were talking about the throw bag from canoe to canoe. How would the throw bag work if you were two people in a canoe with the throw bag, no other canoe around, throwing the bag toward shore?
Throwing the bag toward shore.
Right, I know what he's saying. Yeah, again, I don't think it's possible. If the shore was only 7 or 8 feet away, what we'd initiate again would be the demonstration of self-rescue. Initiate self-rescue, which would not be able to get the bag out, throw it, and properly reach it. I don't think you could reach the shore that way. It'd be a very tough maneuver, and we would discourage it.
Well, let's walk up here. We want to meet Howard Kessler. Go ahead, your question, and where are you calling from?
Lyman, Maine.
Wyman, Maine.
Lyman.
Lyman?
Right, just south of Portland.
I know where it is.
That's good. All right, my question is, how do you feel about canoeists and water skiers?
How do you feel about canoeists and water skiers?
The canoeists congregate in the middle of the pond.
You've been sitting there for 55 minutes after thinking that one up.
Well, it's a difficult thing. That's why we mentioned high visibility canoes. It's hard on motorboats to see a canoe out there at times, and it's tough. It's a tough situation. I think that one of the problems we have on some of the big lakes are the high-powered boats and canoes. I think both parties have to recognize the danger and react accordingly.
It seems like that most of the canoeists go out just when we start water skiing. They seem to wait for us.
Seem to wait for you water skiers.
Right.
The small craft has a right of way, too.
Small craft has right of way. Howard, come up here. Howard Kessler, stay right here, Walter, please. We want to thank you for this great opportunity to come out to Camp Roosevelt and share this evening with your young people out here tonight. And it's been such a great setting, and it's been such great fun. And we had a question a moment ago that came in from a young man who asked about your canoe program at Roosevelt. Can you tell us in the brief time that we have?
Well, I don't know how much time you've got. I could spend 3 hours on our program here at Camp Roosevelt, but we do have a good canoeing program. There's no doubt about it. It's part of our canoeing merit badge, and just about everything that you folks have been talking about tonight, we teach. The safety devices that they wear, how to get in and out of a canoe safely, how to, well, you saw the kids there bringing the canoe in with the airplane rescue and what have you. All of this is part of one of the merit badges, canoeing merit badge. And in addition to that, why we also teach proper sailing and proper rowboating and the whole 9 yards.
What a marvelous facility this is, isn't it?
It's beautiful. It's
How many acres? 12,000?
No. We've got 1,600. 400 right here in the pond, though.
400 in the pond?
Right.
But I mean the land around.
No, we have 1,600 total acres.
1,600 total acres?
Right.
Well, I dug that out of a Bangor Daily News clipping. 16,000 gives you an idea what happens to newspapers.
If I can get 16,000, we'll take it, bud.
There comes taxpaying.
Well, listen, we've had a grand time out here, and for our young people who have participated, who gave of their time to come out, and Walter, you're great to interview.
It's a pleasure.
You listen, this interest and to have the calls that we had, particularly from people who don't canoe, who said that we were doing something of a service here tonight, why, it kind of made it all. We're going to do something next spring, old Tapper.
We've got a lot of people in Maine interested, and recreational whitewater is coming in. We've got to help the people. We've got to go after them and show them the safe way to do it.
Is there another program anywhere in the state like the one the university has at this time?
A lot of people are getting into it, but I just feel that we have the certified people. I think it's important to have certified people as instructors, and that's the Red Cross is coming through the new certification, incidentally. In 1983, they see the need for it, so there's definitely a need out there to get certified people as instructors.
All right, before we sign off the National Whitewater Race that's coming off in Dead River, where will the competitors be from, and will people be afforded an opportunity to see these great canoeists in action?
It'll be just a wonderful opportunity to see the greatest canoers, or wild water canoers in the country, and it'll be held at the Dead River, at the West Forks, and the state of Maine will be represented with some winners. We're going to have some people in the winner's circle up there, Bud, and the support will be greatly appreciated. We have great teams from the Orono, Bangor, all over the state. George Walsh has made several times, Bill Stearns and his family are going to be involved, and we're going to put some winners up there.
Well, listen, you people, you were just great to be with tonight. Before we leave you on this magnificent summer evening, a July night at Fitz Pond, Camp Roosevelt, amid trees, a natural surrounding, never built in any other television studio anywhere in the world. This was precisely as the master painted it and left it. It's sundown now here at Fitz Pond, all 400 acres. The young people here, the Boy Scouts who are at Camp Roosevelt, soon will be saying good night and going back for the evening. In the meantime, we're going to leave you with this thought. We hope that you got a message from tonight's show. We hope the demonstrations by our young people was most effective and that you did enjoy it. We'd love to hear from you. On behalf of Walter Abbott, Mr. Kessler, all the people who participated in the show, and this great staff who put this on, this remote was not an easy matter. I'm Bud Leavitt, wishing you a happy summer night.
Along the mountain track, and as I go, I love to sing my